The message arrived at 3 in the morning, and it changed everything for Ambassador Elena Vasquez. She had been sleeping in her small apartment on the orbital station called Gateway when her communication device began to scream with an urgent alarm. The sound was different from any alert she had heard before, and her heart began to pound as she reached for the glowing screen. The words on the screen made her blood run cold. Ambassador Vasquez, you are hereby summoned to appear before the full Galactic Council at Convergence Prime within 48 hours. And failure to appear will be considered an act of war against the 12-member species. Elena read the message 3 times because she could not believe what she was seeing. In the 30 years since humanity had been granted provisional membership in the Galactic Council, no human had ever been summoned in such a manner. What could this possibly mean? And what had humanity done to deserve such a threatening message? She threw on her uniform and rushed to her office, her mind racing with terrible possibilities. Had one of the colony ships done something wrong? Had a human captain accidentally violated some ancient alien law? The message gave no explanation, and that silence was more frightening than any accusation could have been. Within an hour, she was speaking with Earth Command through a secure channel, and the faces on her screen looked just as confused and worried as she felt. General Marcus Webb, the head of human space defense, asked her what she knew, but she had nothing to tell him. They gave us no reason, Elena explained, her voice tight with stress. They simply demanded I appear, or they will consider it an act of war. General Webb's face grew pale at those words. An act of war? Against all 12 species? Elena, that would mean the end of everything we have built. She knew he was right, and the weight of that knowledge pressed down on her like a mountain. Humanity had worked so hard to earn their place among the stars, and now everything could be destroyed by a single meeting. The journey to Convergence Prime took 18 hours, and Elena spent every minute of that time trying to prepare for what she might face. She studied the histories of each council species, looking for any clue about what might have angered them. She reviewed every report from human ships and colonies, searching for some mistake that could explain this sudden hostility. But she found nothing, and that made everything worse. When her ship finally dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Convergence Prime, Elena gasped at the sight before her. The station was enormous beyond imagination, a massive structure that looked like a flower made of metal and light. It was the heart of galactic civilization, the place where the 12 ancient species had met and made decisions for over 10,000 years. And now, somewhere inside that beautiful structure, they were waiting to judge humanity. Her shuttle docked at a port reserved for diplomatic vessels, and Elena was met by a group of alien guards. They were Velori, tall beings with forearms and skin that shimmered like pearls. They said nothing as they led her through corridors that seemed to stretch forever. Elena had been to Convergence Prime twice before, but always for small meetings with minor officials. She had never walked these grand halls, never seen the ancient artwork that covered every wall. The images showed great moments in galactic history, battles and treaties and discoveries that had happened long before humans learned to make fire. And as she walked, she noticed something that made her stomach twist with fear. Every alien she passed was watching her with expressions she could not read. Some looked angry, some looked sad, and some looked at her the way a person might look at an animal about to be put down. What did they know that she did not? The guards stopped before a massive door that reached higher than a 10-story building. Strange symbols covered its surface, and they glowed with soft golden light. "The council awaits," one of the guards said, and then the doors began to open. The chamber beyond was the largest room Elena had ever seen. It was shaped like a bowl, with rings of seats rising up and up until they disappeared into shadow. Thousands of aliens sat in those seats, representatives from all 12 species, and every single one of them was staring down at her. At the center of the chamber was a raised platform, and standing on that platform was a being unlike any Elena had ever encountered. It was the Archon, the leader of the Galactic Council, and it was made entirely of living crystal. Light moved through its body like blood through veins, and when it spoke, the sound seemed to come from everywhere at once. Ambassador Elena Vasquez of the human species, you stand before the Galactic Council to answer for crimes beyond your understanding. Elena forced herself to stand straight, even though every part of her wanted to run. Archon, I come in peace and with respect. But I must ask, what crimes? My people have done nothing wrong. A rumble of sound moved through the chamber, thousands of alien voices whispering and murmuring. The Archon raised one crystalline hand, and silence fell like a hammer. You do not know what your species has done because you do not know what your species truly is, the Archon said, and its voice carried a weight that made Elena's bones ache. For 30 years we have watched you, studied you, and debated what must be done. And now, the time for debate has ended. Elena felt her hands begin to shake, but she kept her voice steady. Then tell me, what are we accused of? What have we done? The Archon's crystal body pulsed with deep red light, and when it spoke again, its words fell upon Elena like stones. Your species was never meant to exist, Ambassador. You are an error, a mistake, a corruption of the natural order that we have spent 10,000 years protecting. And now, we must correct that error before it is too late. The chamber erupted in noise, aliens shouting and stamping and making sounds of approval. Elena stood alone in the center of it all, her mind reeling from what she had just heard. Humanity was a mistake? What could that possibly mean? And how could she save her people from a crime they did not even know they had committed? She looked up at the thousands of faces staring down at her, and in that moment, she understood something terrible. These beings had already made their decision. They had not summoned her to hear humanity's defense. They had summoned her to witness humanity's death sentence. Elena stood frozen in the center of the great chamber as the noise of the alien crowd washed over her like a storm. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest, but she refused to let her fear show on her face. You say we are a mistake, she called out, forcing her voice to carry above the noise. But you have not explained what that means. By what right do you condemn my entire species without even telling us what we have done? The Archon raised its crystalline hands, and once again silence fell across the chamber. The ancient being looked down at Elena with eyes that glowed like captured stars. Very well, Ambassador. If you wish to know the truth of your existence, then you shall have it. Perhaps it will help you understand why what must happen next is necessary. A section of the floor began to rise, and a massive pedestal emerged from beneath the ground. Floating above the pedestal was something that looked like a book, but it was made of pure light. The pages turned by themselves, and strange symbols danced across its surface. Behold the Codex of Origins, the Archon announced. This living document is older than any civilization in this galaxy. It was created by the Watchers, beings who existed before any of us, and it records the true history of every species that has ever lived. Elena stared at the glowing book with wide eyes. She had heard rumors of such a thing, ancient records that contained secrets no one could imagine. But she had never believed it was real. The Archon moved closer to the codex, and images began to form in the air above it. Elena saw stars and planets and ships that looked nothing like anything she had ever seen before. 4 million years ago, 2 great species ruled this galaxy, the Archon explained. They were called the Architects and the Devourers, and they were the most powerful beings ever to exist. The Architects built worlds and created life wherever they went. The Devourers consumed everything in their path, feeding on the energy of stars themselves. The images show beautiful cities rising from empty planets, and then terrible creatures tearing those cities apart. Elena watched in horror as entire worlds burned. These two species fought a war that lasted for 100,000 years. They destroyed each other completely, and when the war ended, both were gone forever. But before they died, they did something that would change the galaxy for all time. The images shifted, and Elena saw two massive ships flying through space. They were headed toward a small blue planet, a planet that looked very familiar. The architects and the devourers both sent seeding ships to preserve their legacies. These ships carried genetic material that would grow into new versions of their species. But something went wrong. Elena watched as the two ships collided in a flash of terrible light. The wreckage fell toward the blue planet, burning as it entered the atmosphere. Both ships crashed on your world, Ambassador. Their genetic payloads merged together in the primitive oceans of Earth. And from that merger, something was born that was never supposed to exist. The Archon turned to face Elena, and its crystal body pulsed with angry red light. Humans are not natural beings, Ambassador. You carry the combined genetic legacy of both the architects and the devourers. You have within you the ability to create and the ability to destroy, both at levels that no other species can match. Elena felt dizzy as she tried to understand what she was being told. Her entire species was an accident? They were made from the remains of two ancient enemies? But we have done nothing wrong, she managed to say. We did not choose to be what we are. That does not matter, a new voice hissed. Elena turned to see a reptilian creature with scales that glittered like emeralds. She recognized it as a representative of the hegemony of scales, one of the oldest council species. What matters is what you will become, the reptile continued. The Codex tells us that your dormant genes are beginning to activate. Within a few generations, humans will develop abilities that will make them unstoppable. You will be able to change your own bodies at will. You will be immune to psionic control. And your capacity for violence will exceed anything the galaxy has ever seen. Another alien spoke up, a being that looked like a cloud of glowing mist. We of the Mindweaver Collective have studied human minds for 30 years. We cannot read your thoughts the way we can read other species. You are already partially immune to our abilities. This proves that the dormant genes are awakening. A third voice joined in, this one coming from a creature made of shifting rocks and metals. The Silicate Consortium has analyzed human technology. Your species learns too fast. You advance too quickly. In just a few centuries, you have gone from riding animals to traveling between stars. This is not normal. This is the architect genius combined with the devourer hunger. Elena looked from one accusing face to another, her mind spinning. All of these species had been watching humanity, studying them, judging them. And now they had decided that humans were too dangerous to live. What do you plan to do? Elena asked, though she already knew the answer. The Archon spoke again, and its voice was heavy with what might have been regret. The Council has voted, Ambassador. For the safety of all life in this galaxy, the human species must be sterilized. Your people will be allowed to live out their natural lives, but there will be no more human children. Within 100 years, your species will peacefully fade away. Elena felt as if she had been struck. You want to end us? You want to make sure no human is ever born again? It is the merciful option, the Archon said. Others wanted immediate destruction, but we chose to let you die slowly and without pain. You should be grateful. Grateful? They wanted her to be grateful that her people would be erased from existence. Something changed in Elena at that moment. The fear that had been gripping her heart began to transform into something else, something hotter and hotter. She was angry, angrier than she had ever been in her life. You speak of mercy, but I see only murder, she said, her voice now steady and cold. You have decided to destroy my people based on what we might become, not what we have done. You fear us because of genes we did not choose to have. Is this the justice of the great Galactic Council? The Archon's light flickered. We do what we must to protect the galaxy. No, Elena replied. You do what you fear. And if you think humanity will simply accept this fate, then you truly do not understand us at all. She turned her back on the Archon and began to walk toward the great doors. Behind her, the chamber erupted in shouting and chaos. You have 72 hours to prepare your people for the transition, the Archon called after her. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. Elena did not turn around. She just kept walking, her mind already racing with plans. 72 hours. That was all the time she had to save the human race. But giving up was not something humans knew how to do. Elena barely made it back to her shuttle before her hands started shaking so hard she could not control them. She collapsed into the pilot's seat and took deep breaths, trying to calm her racing heart. 72 hours. That was all the time humanity had before the Council came to sterilize them. She activated her secure communication system and sent an emergency signal to Earth. Within minutes, she was looking at the worried faces of General Webb and the other leaders of human civilization. They want to end us, Elena said, her voice hollow with shock. They say we are a genetic mistake, a combination of two ancient species that were never supposed to mix. They are going to make sure no human child is ever born again. The faces on her screen went pale with horror. General Webb slammed his fist against his desk. That is genocide, he growled. They cannot do this. They have already voted, Elena replied. In their minds, it is already decided. We have 72 hours before they send ships to begin the process. For a long moment, no one spoke. What could be said in the face of such news? Then a woman with gray hair and sharp eyes leaned forward. She was Admiral Chun, the commander of humanity's space fleet. Protocol Orpheus, she said quietly. General Webb's eyes widened. You cannot be serious. That protocol was created for the worst possible scenario. And this is not the worst possible scenario, Admiral Chun asked. They want to end our entire species. I would say that qualifies. Elena looked between them, confused. What is Protocol Orpheus? Admiral Chun's face was grim. It is a plan we created in secret, Ambassador. A plan for if the galaxy ever turned against us. We never thought we would actually use it, but it seems that time has come. She began explaining the details, and Elena listened with growing amazement. Humanity had been preparing for this possibility for years, hiding their true capabilities, building secret defenses, and creating emergency plans that no one outside Earth knew about. We do not have the ships to fight the entire Council fleet, Admiral Chun continued. But we do not need to. Protocol Orpheus is not about winning a battle. It is about surviving until we can find another way. Elena nodded slowly, hope beginning to flicker in her chest. Then start immediately. We cannot waste a single moment. She ended the call and sat back in her seat, her mind racing. The plan was in motion, but she needed more information. There had to be something she could use against the Council, some weakness in their accusations. A soft chiming sound made her look up. Someone was requesting permission to approach her shuttle. The identification signal showed it was a Valori, one of the 4-armed species that had guarded her earlier. Elena hesitated, but something told her to take the risk. She opened the airlock and waited. The alien who entered was young by Valori standards, with pearl-colored skin that seemed to glow in the dim light of the shuttle. It looked around nervously before speaking. Ambassador Vasquez, my name is Kethra, and I am an archivist in the Council's historical records. I have information you need to hear. Elena studied the alien with cautious eyes. Why would you help me? Your council just sentenced my species to death. Cathara's four hands twisted together in what might have been distress. Because what the council is doing is wrong. And because the information they showed you is not the truth. Elena's heart jumped. What do you mean? Cathara pulled a small device from its robes and projected an image into the air. It was the Codex of Origins, but this version looked different from the one Elena had seen in the council chamber. I have spent my entire life studying the Codex, Cathara explained. I know every page, every symbol, every word. And when the council presented its case against humanity, I noticed something that no one else seemed to see. The alien pointed to a section of glowing text. This passage is what the Archon used to justify the vote against your species. But look here, at these symbols. Elena leaned closer, even though she could not read the alien writing. What am I looking at? These symbols have been altered, Cathara said, its voice dropping to a whisper. Someone changed the Codex, Ambassador. The original text did not say that humanity should be destroyed. It said that humanity should be protected. Elena felt the world tilt beneath her feet. Someone falsified the evidence against us? Yes, and I think I know who. Cathara's eyes darkened with anger. 3 species spoke against humanity in the council chamber. The hegemony of Scales, the Mindweaver Collective, and the Silicate Consortium. These 3 have always worked together, always voted as a bloc. And I have found records showing that their representatives accessed the Codex in secret over 300 years ago. Elena's mind was racing. Why would they do this? Why would they want to destroy humanity before we even existed? Cathara looked at her with something like admiration in its alien eyes. Because they are afraid, Ambassador. Not of your genes or your potential for violence. They are afraid of what humanity represents. And what is that? Cathara brought up more images, showing human history. Wars and disasters, yes, but also art and music and acts of incredible kindness. Humans saving each other from floods and fires. Humans building hospitals and schools. Humans reaching out to help strangers they had never met. Every other species in the galaxy reacts to fear by becoming smaller, Cathara said. When we are threatened, we hide, we submit. We accept our place in the order of things. But humans do not do this. The alien looked directly into Elena's eyes. When humans are afraid, they become stronger. When humans are threatened, they fight back. When humans face impossible odds, they somehow find a way to survive. This is not because of your genes, Ambassador. This is because of something else, something that cannot be explained by science. Elena thought about everything she knew of human history. All the times her people had faced extinction and refused to give up. All the wars they had survived, all the disasters they had overcome, all the challenges they had conquered. The 3 conspirators feared that if humanity reaches its full potential, the balance of power in the galaxy will shift forever. Cathara continued. They have been the most powerful species for thousands of years. They do not want that to change. So they created a lie, a false threat, to justify wiping you out before you could become too strong to stop. Elena stood up, her fear replaced by burning determination. We need to expose them. We need to show the council the truth. Cathara nodded. I have been gathering evidence for months, but I cannot present it alone. The council would never listen to a junior archivist. But if you stand with me, if we present the truth together, we might have a chance. Elena gripped the alien's four-handed grasp in what she hoped was a gesture of friendship. Then let us find that evidence and show the galaxy what these conspirators have done. For the first time since this nightmare began, Elena felt something she had thought was lost forever. She felt hope. On Earth, Admiral Chun stood in the command center of humanity's secret defense network and watched as our orders spread across the solar system. Every human colony, every ship, every space station was receiving the same message. Protocol Orpheus is now active. Within hours, the great cities of Earth began to empty. Millions of people moved underground into shelters that had been built in secret over decades. They carried food and water and medicine, enough to survive for years if necessary. In orbit, human ships that had been stationed around Earth began to scatter. They flew in every direction, hiding in asteroid fields and behind moons, and in the empty spaces between planets. The Council fleet would be looking for a target, but humanity was refusing to give them one. "How much time do we have?" Admiral Chun asked her tactical officer. "The Council fleet is gathering at the edge of our solar system," the officer replied, his voice tight with tension. "Our scouts count over 700 warships, Admiral. They outnumber our fleet more than 15 to 1. 700 warships. Admiral Chun felt the weight of those numbers pressing down on her. Humanity had only 40 combat vessels, and most of those were small patrol ships meant for protecting cargo routes. How could they possibly stand against such overwhelming force? But then she remembered something her grandmother had told her long ago. "It is not the size of the dog in the fight that matters," the old woman had said. "It is the size of the fight in the dog." Admiral Chun smiled grimly. If the Council wanted a fight, they would discover just how much fight humanity had. "Continue with Protocol Orpheus," she ordered, "and activate the Prometheus Defense Network." Her officers looked at her with wide eyes. The Prometheus Network was humanity's greatest secret, a system of weapons and shields that had been hidden even from their own people. It was technology that should have been impossible according to galactic physics, but human scientists had never cared much about what was supposed to be impossible. Across the solar system, hidden platforms began to power up. Weapons that had been sleeping for years came online. Shields that could stop anything the Council threw at them hummed with energy. And on the dark side of the moon, something massive began to move. Meanwhile, on Convergence Prime, Elena and Kethra were working frantically to gather evidence of the conspiracy. The young archivist had access to records that no outsider could reach, and together they were building a case that could shake the foundations of the Council itself. "Look at this," Kethra said, projecting another document into the air. 300 years ago, representatives of the 3 conspirator species met in secret. This is the record of that meeting. Elena read the translated text, and her blood ran cold. The aliens had been planning humanity's destruction for centuries. They had tracked the development of human civilization from the first time humans learned to use tools. And they had decided that humanity must be eliminated before they could become a threat. They altered the codex to justify their plan, Kethra explained. The original text said that the combination of architect and devour genes would create a species capable of great good and great evil, and that this species should be guided and protected so that the good might prevail. Elena felt tears burning in her eyes. They twisted the truth to make us look like monsters. Yes, but now we have the proof. Kethra gathered all the documents together into a single file. "We must present this to the Archon immediately." They rushed through the corridors of Convergence Prime, but when they reached the Council chamber, they found the great doors sealed. Guards stood before them with weapons drawn. "Ambassador Vasquez, you are confined to your quarters by order of the Council," one guard announced. "You will not be permitted to disrupt the proceedings." Elena felt despair washing over her. They had the evidence, but no way to present it. Then her communication device buzzed with an urgent message from Earth. It was Admiral Chun. "Ambassador, we are picking up movement in the Council fleet. They are not waiting for the deadline. They are advancing toward Earth right now." Elena's heart froze. "They are attacking early?" "Yes. And Ambassador, there is something else you need to know." Admiral Chun's voice was grim but steady. The three species that spoke against humanity in the Council? The hegemony of Scales, the Mindweavers, and the Silicate Consortium? They are the ones leading the fleet. The other Council species have not moved their ships at all. Elena looked at Kethra with sudden understanding. The conspirators are acting alone. They know we have discovered the truth. They are trying to destroy humanity before we can expose them. Kethra's pearl-colored skin turned pale with horror. If they succeed, no one will ever know what really happened. Elena grabbed her communication device and began recording. She spoke quickly, telling everything she and Kethra had discovered. The altered codex, the secret meeting 300 years ago, the evidence that proved the conspiracy. She sent the recording to every frequency she could reach, broadcasting it across the entire station. People of the Galactic Council, hear the truth, Elena said, her voice carrying all the passion and determination of her species. Humanity has been falsely accused. The evidence against us was manufactured by three species who fear what we might become. They do not want to protect the galaxy. They want to protect their own power. Ask yourselves, if we are truly so dangerous, why did they have to lie? Across Convergence Prime, aliens of every species stopped what they were doing to listen. The broadcast was playing on every screen, echoing through every corridor. And slowly, understanding began to spread. The Archon appeared on the sealed doors of the council chamber, its crystalline body flickering with confusion and anger. What is the meaning of this disruption? Elena held up Kethra's evidence for all to see. The meaning is that your council has been manipulated, Archon. The vote against humanity was based on lies. And right now, the three species who created those lies are on their way to destroy Earth before the truth can be known. The Archon turned to demand answers from the representatives of the three conspirator species, but their seats were empty. They had fled the moment Elena's broadcast began. Contact the fleet, the Archon commanded. Order them to stop. But it was too late. The conspirators' ships had already entered faster than light travel. They would reach Earth in less than 6 hours. Elena looked at Kethra with determination in her eyes. Can you get me back to my shuttle? The alien nodded. Yes, but what will you do? Elena smiled, and there was something fierce in that smile. I am going to show the galaxy what happens when you try to destroy humanity. The conspirators' fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system, and the commanders of those 700 warships expected to find an easy victory waiting for them. They had studied human defenses for years. They knew exactly where every patrol ship and defense satellite was supposed to be. But what they found was nothing. Where are they? Demanded Supreme Commander Vex Call of the Hegemony of Scales, his reptilian eyes scanning the empty space before him. Where are the humans? His tactical officers searched desperately, but there was nothing to find. The orbital stations were dark. The patrol ships had vanished. Even the surface of Earth seemed empty, with no signs of life in any of the major cities. They are hiding, hissed Admiral Sithra of the Mindweaver Collective. They think they can escape us by running like frightened animals. But deep in his glowing mind, Sithra felt the first cold touch of fear. Something was wrong here. Humans did not run. That was the whole reason they had to be destroyed. Consortium leader Granite of the Silicate species rumbled with impatience. We do not have time for games. Begin the bombardment. If we cannot find them, we will burn every planet and moon until there is nowhere left to hide. The fleet began to move forward, weapons charging for a massive assault. This would be the end of the human species, a quick and brutal execution that would be over before the rest of the council even knew what had happened. Then the impossible occurred. A voice crackled across every communication channel, calm and steady and completely unafraid. Attention, invading fleet. This is Admiral Chun of the United Human Defense Force. You have entered our territory without permission and with hostile intent. You have exactly one chance to turn around and leave. I suggest you take it." Supreme Commander Vexcall laughed, a harsh sound like rocks grinding together. "You suggest we leave? You have no fleet, human. You have no defenses. You have nothing. Is that what you think?" Admiral Chun's voice carried a hint of something that might have been amusement. "Then allow me to show you what nothing looks like." The space around the conspirator fleet suddenly lit up with thousands of points of light. Ships appeared from behind asteroids and moons, emerging from the shadows where they had been hiding. But these were not the small patrol vessels the conspirators had expected. These were warships, sleek and deadly, and armed with weapons that should not have existed. "Impossible," Admiral Sithra whispered. "Our intelligence said they had only 40 ships." "Your intelligence was wrong," Admiral Chun replied. "You see, we learned something important about the galaxy a long time ago. We learned that the older species look down on us, that they do not take us seriously, that they think we are too young and too primitive to matter. So we let you believe it. We hid our true capabilities, built our real fleet in secret, and waited to see if we would ever need it." She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was hard as steel. "It seems we need it now." The hidden defense platforms around Earth activated their weapons, painting the conspirator fleet with targeting lasers. The Prometheus shields came online, creating a barrier of energy that surrounded the entire solar system. And on the dark side of the moon, the massive structure that had been sleeping for decades finally revealed itself. It was a ship, but unlike any ship the galaxy had ever seen. It was 5 kilometers long, bristling with weapons, and it moved with a grace that seemed impossible for something so large. "Allow me to introduce the Defiance," Admiral Chun said proudly. "The first ship of humanity's true space navy. We built it in secret because we always knew this day might come. The day when the galaxy decided we did not deserve to exist." Supreme Commander Vexcall stared at the massive human ship and felt something he had not experienced in centuries. Genuine terror. "Attack!" he screamed. "Attack now, before they can use those weapons." The conspirator fleet surged forward, firing everything they had. But the human defenses were ready. Energy shields deflected the incoming fire. Human ships dodged and weaved with skill that seemed almost supernatural. And then humanity fired back. The weapons on the Defiance unleashed power that made the stars themselves seem dim. Conspirator ships were disabled with surgical precision, their engines destroyed, but their life support intact. Human ships swarmed around the larger alien vessels, targeting specific systems and leaving the crews alive but helpless. The battle lasted less than 2 hours, and when it was over, the mighty conspirator fleet was crippled. Over 600 ships drifted powerless in space, their weapons silent and their commanders humiliated. Not a single human ship had been destroyed. Not a single alien life had been taken. Supreme Commander Vexcall was transported to the Defiance as a prisoner, and he found himself face to face with Admiral Chun. The human woman was small compared to his massive reptilian form, but there was something in her eyes that made him want to look away. "We could have destroyed you," Admiral Chun said quietly. "Every single one of your ships, every crew member, every soldier. We had the power to wipe you out completely. But we chose not to." Vexcall's voice was a defeated whisper. "Why?" "Because that is not who we are," Admiral Chun replied. "You called us dangerous because we carry the genes of the architects and the devourers. You said we would bring destruction to the galaxy. But you were wrong about us, just like you were wrong about everything else." She leaned closer, and her voice carried the weight of all human history. "We are not the architects, and we are not the devourers. We are something new, something that has never existed before. We have the power to create and the power to destroy. Yes, But we also have something those ancient species never had. What is that? Vexkel asked. The power to choose. 1 week later, Elena Vasquez stood once again in the great chamber of the Galactic Council. But this time, she was not alone. Kethra stood beside her, along with Admiral Chun and representatives from every human colony. The Archon looked down at them with new respect in its crystalline eyes. Ambassador Vasquez, the Council has reviewed the evidence you provided. The 3 conspirator species have admitted their deception. They will face justice for their crimes. A murmur of approval moved through the chamber, but Elena raised her hand for silence. Archon, the Council asked what humanity wants as restitution for this attack on our species. I am here to give you our answer. The chamber fell silent, every alien leaning forward to hear what demands humanity would make. Elena looked up at the thousands of faces watching her, and she smiled. We want nothing. Shocked gasps echoed through the chamber. The Archon's light flickered with confusion. Nothing? After everything that was done to you? Nothing, Elena confirmed. We do not want revenge. We do not want territory or power or wealth. All we want is what we have always wanted, a seat at the table. A real seat where we can work alongside you to build a better galaxy. She spread her arms wide, including everyone in the chamber. The architects only knew how to create. The devourers only knew how to consume. But humans? We know how to choose. We can decide to forgive. We can decide to work together. We can decide that the future does not have to be defined by the mistakes of the past. The Archon was silent for a long moment, and then its crystal body began to glow with warm golden light. Ambassador Vasquez, it seems we have much to learn from your species. The Council hereby grants humanity full membership with all rights and privileges. The chamber erupted in applause, and Elena felt tears streaming down her face. Later, as she walked through the corridors of Convergence Prime with Kethra at her side, the alien asked her a question that had been bothering them. Were you ever afraid, Ambassador? When the fleet came for Earth? Elena thought about the question carefully before answering. Terrified. Every single second. Then how did you stand against them without trembling? Elena stopped walking and looked out at the stars through a nearby window. Billions of points of light, each one a sun with worlds orbiting around it. And somewhere out there, on a small blue planet called Earth, her people were looking up at those same stars. Because being afraid is not the same as giving up, she said softly. Humans have always been afraid. Of the dark, of the unknown, of each other. But somewhere along the way, we learned that fear does not have to make you small. It can make you fight. It can make you build. It can make you reach for things you have no right to reach for. She turned back to Kethra with a smile. That is our real secret, my friend. Not our genes, not our weapons. Just stubborn, stupid hope that refuses to die, no matter how dark things get. Kethra considered this for a moment, then made a sound that might have been laughter. You are a very strange species, Elena Vasquez. Elena laughed too, and together they walked toward a future filled with possibilities. For humanity had proven something that the entire galaxy would never forget. It is not what you are that defines you, but what you choose to become.